Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you taking the time today to join our webinar. Today, we are going to be discussing the contact center trends that you cannot ignore. Well, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Karen Salazar, SVP of Marketing and Products at NetFortris, and very pleased to announce that Donna Fluss will also be joining us today, and she is the president of DMG Consulting. Donna is a former Gartner analyst and is the industry's foremost expert contact center strategies. So thank you, Donna. And additionally, Donna and I are also joined by Tom Swayze, CTO of NetFortris. So in regards to contact centers, contact center technology is rapidly evolving to meet the ever-changing needs of consumers. Everybody is aware that obviously contact center experiences drive or they really can damage customer loyalty. A consumer's experience when they call into a contact center directly affects their desire to continue doing business with a company or their desire to try a competitor. In fact, American Express found that over half of consumers said that they try a new brand in search of a better customer experience. That's pretty powerful. There are several studies that are showing that consumers will stop doing business with a company simply because of bad customer experience. So having the correct contact center is critical. Smart contact center managers are looking for ways to add flexibility, scalability, and customization capabilities to their contact center environments, and many of these are looking for cloud-based options such as what NetFortris can offer. And to meet these demands, contact centers are investing in improving call center experiences. A recent Aberdeen research study found that 42% of contact centers cite the need for better customer retention, 33% cite the desire to improve customer satisfaction, and 32% are interested in cross-selling and upselling. It's clear the contact center managers are investing in new ways to improve performance, strengthen customer relationships, and build better brands. Now, I'd like to hand it over to Donna Fluss, who will share important trends and considerations for contact centers who are looking at enhancing their contact center. Donna?
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen, and good day to everyone. And I'm not sure where everybody is, but anyone who's not in Buffalo should consider themselves very fortunate at the moment. So we're going to talk on the opposite of Buffalo. We're going to talk about some hot contact center trends today. The contact center world, folks, is on fire. Never before have executives around the world so fully appreciated the contributions and benefits of these customer-facing organizations. Innovation is high, driven by a new generation of cloud-based contact center infrastructure solutions and vendors who are not limited by the traditional 6 to 18-month software release cycle. So let's take a look at 5 hot contact center trends and discuss their impact on organizations, their customers, and their employees. And if you would, we're going to take a look at this slide here, and we're going to start with a discussion of the primary driver of all the change in the marketplace, cloud-based contact center infrastructure solutions. Now, I'm going to run through the benefits, the top 6 benefits in a moment, but here's pretty much what happened. Back in about, close to 18 years ago now, a new breed of contact center solution came to the market. And it took a long time for this solution, contact center infrastructure solutions, to start to gain some recognition. But when the Great Recession, technology recession hit, the recession in general hit in about year 2000, all of a sudden, organizations started to really be open to implementing cloud-based contact center infrastructure solutions. And there are now just dozens and dozens of these vendors who are absolutely giving the traditional premise-based vendors a real run for their money, so to speak. Now, there are 6 primary benefits of these solutions. And the first is the traditional benefits of any cloud-based solution, which is that you can buy it using an operating budget instead of your capital budget. that's already beneficial. And I know I've managed many, many call centers. And, it was pretty easy if I wanted to move around money from one operating category to another. Totally legitimate and really easy to do. So that makes it a lot easier to acquire these solutions. But that's just the beginning of it, because the cloud-based contact center infrastructure vendors are also a very practical lot and grouping of competitors. And they realize that their customers need to be up and running. So they don't charge a huge amount for the implementation or the integrations. So, to them, those activities for which they hopefully will be able to recoup their investments, but in some cases they don't even do that, and they're being made in order to get the customers up and running as quickly as possible. Now, the second benefit is ongoing innovation. I've implemented more contact center solutions than most people have fingers and toes. And it was really frustrating when after, working to get this for 9 to 12 months and then working around the vendor's implementation schedule, by the time I put up the solution, it was out of date. I mean, there was no way I was going to go back to the capital committee and ask for more money at that point, and it was frustrating to know that I was putting in an outdated solution. Well, the cloud-based vendors are constantly delivering innovation to the marketplace, and that innovation is available for you, the end user, to use when you want to use it. Now, another great benefit of these solutions is the resources. And in lots of organizations, IT resources are being cut back because they're just being cut back across the board. But it's rather interesting because CIOs have never really fully appreciated the differences, if I may, between contact center solutions. I know many times I was told that I was going to have to standardize on one switch or another, and so what I would do when that happened is I would just sit there and calculate the cost of giving up functionality, and the CIO would back away. But even in great situations, there's a limited number of people who know how to use your contact center solution. Now, if you move to the cloud, you're still going to need to have somebody on your staff to help you configure and maintain and add people and handle messaging. But you're going to need about a half an FTE, or if you're a really large organization, maybe a full FTE. You don't even need full backup, and the reason is because the vendor has that capability. So when your person goes on vacation, you just depend on the vendor for that period of time. But it gets a lot better than that because these are highly experienced vendors. They know contact center. They know infrastructure. They know how to make this stuff happen. So they can share best practices, which odds are you didn't have within your shop. And then depending on the vendor, they may also have vertical domain expertise, which is really exciting. Now, a fourth benefit is reliability, because the model of these vendors is that they're running in at least 2, possibly more geographically dispersed data centers. So by definition, when you buy the solution, you're getting full redundancy and typically high availability. Now, another great benefit is integrations, because a lot of these solutions now come out of the box with canned integrations. And where the premise-based vendors, even if they did the integration 2 weeks before, would still come to you and charge the full price, the cloud-based vendors don't, because they get it. They get the fact that it's about getting you up and running. And lastly, security. So we all know, we all read the paper, whether it's Chase, who was broken into, and 76 million records were stolen. I mean, the same day, almost exactly the same time, lots of other retailers were broken into. Security is a huge issue. The cloud-based vendors are not working just with one organization. They are working with hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations. And so as a result, they have best practices. So when you're making your selection, I strongly recommend that you get your IT and security folks involved, and of interest, you may learn something interesting. So first trend is that cloud-based solutions are available, and what's exciting is that it's contact center infrastructure, but also every other solution. So let's take a look at the second trend we're going to talk about, which is speech analytics. And without a doubt, these solutions are also available in the cloud. Now, what speech analytics does, and there's both real-time and post-call speech analytics. is that it structures unstructured conversation, converts it to metadata, and allows you to use that information for the benefit, first and foremost, of your customers, and also, of course, for your contact center and for the company overall. Now, there's real-time speech analytics, which structures conversations in real time and is able to send alerts and notifications. We've got an unhappy customer, we've got a screamer, we've got an agent saying things they shouldn't say, and that's an emerging technology. What we're going to spend a couple minutes on is post-call speech analytics. And there are 6 primary outputs of these solutions. The first is that organizations are using them to identify the underlying reasons why customers call. Now, if you're running a small center, you'll know this, but if you're running a large center, let's say it could be 250 seats, it could be 2,500 seats, odds are you're going to have multiple sites, and you've got calls coming in all over the place. So, just knowing the reasons why customers call is a great issue, is a great use, and allows you also to identify when things aren't going right. Okay, so the second use is trend analysis. So the name of the game is not just using the system to create pretty charts, which a lot of organizations do, and those pretty charts could be heat maps, can be all types of different things that show you the reasons why it is that customers are calling. But what you really need to do with that information is use it and use speech analytics as a change agent within your organization. And so you use it to see what went wrong and then to figure out ways to fix it. So on a month-to-month basis, you should start to see improvements in different areas. Okay, second primary use. Third primary use is emotion detection. Are the people calling happy, sad, angry, unhappy? Now, emotion detection on a standalone basis is pretty useless, but used in conjunction with root cause analysis, it's highly valuable. But, you've got to be really careful with it. So I'm a Midwesterner, and while it's rare for me to get angry, when I get angry, I get really, really quiet. Now, people who know me really well know it's probably a good idea to leave the room, but the speech analytics application would not recognize that unless it was also doing root cause analysis. Now, talk analysis is another great use. In a conversation between two people, there's always a percentage of time where, almost always I should say, where one person's talking over another. So let's assume that in a typical agent-customer conversation, that's 15-20% of the time. And, again, it varies. You want to use talk over analysis in order to identify the outliers. If somebody's, not talking over less, that's fine. But if you've got somebody talking over your customers 40, 50+%, then you've got a training opportunity. Script adherence is another wonderful use. So speech analytics, it's not going to follow the Gettysburg Address, but if you want to make sure your agents are opening properly and closing properly and giving the mini Miranda properly and doing verification properly, for example, close to when it is somebody talks about changing an address, you can do all that. And the last use is what we call analytics-enabled QA, and this is allowing us to finally automate that very important quality assurance process. And what we do with speech analytics is by setting up appropriate searches, we find calls that are not meeting our requirements. And because we're able to review 100% of the calls at a relatively low cost of doing it, it is a much more effective way of doing quality assurance. So now let's talk about the third trend, which is payment card industry data security standards. And this is another fun one. So a few years ago, the 5 leading credit card brands got together and they decided that they needed to do something to protect their customers. And they're absolutely right. Security is very important. So they introduced some requirements, and the requirement was basically that there's 2 sensitive fields, and that is the credit card number and the CVV, or, it's called different things, but the 5-digit number in the back of the card. And they told all the companies they work with, anyone processing credit cards in it, and actually the original legislation was, the original regulation, because it's not legislation, is that it applied to organizations that process a certain volume. And what they didn't realize is that it would have a dramatic impact on the recording industry. So from the time that they introduced this really good idea the recording solutions and vendors had to figure out what to do about it, because the recording vendors are required by law in all states in the United States, as well as in countries all over the world, to record. So we had a little bit of an issue. So this created an entire market opportunity. And there are 6 primary ways, although there's a lot more than 6 that are used, but 6 primary ways in order to help organizations comply with PCI-DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. The first is one I don't like, and it's where you use a manual pause resume. So the agent gets to hear everything. So when it comes time for the customer to say their credit card number, the agent takes their finger, presses a button, and they can hear everything going on, and when the customer's done, then they resume it. Okay, so it complied with the regulation, but it really wasn't what people had in mind. Okay, so then we went on to the next level. And by the way, it's not exactly, this isn't necessarily the order in which it came down, but it's just kind of a logical presentation of it. So the next way they did it was the automated pause resume, which is great because it absolutely prevents sensitive data from being recorded and is transparent to the customer. And what happens is that when the agent accesses a certain screen, it automatically pauses, so when they get to the credit card entry area, and when they leave that area, it automatically resumes. So this is a pretty good way of doing it. Now, a third way is DTMF, also known as touch tone suppression, so that nobody can hear the touch tones. And the idea is when the customer was entering their credit card number, and in this case they were entering, then nobody would hear the tones. And again, very good. But it was still dependent on the agent to access the third-party interface for this. Okay. Now, the fourth way, and actually desktop analytics is actually one of the underlying technologies enabling some of these things for different vendors. So desktop analytics is a non-programmable way of doing pause and resume, for example. So desktop analytics is also being used to make sure that the agent does not see or hear what's going on by doing a pause and resume. Okay. Then we have real-time speech analytics, which I mentioned earlier, and we can use real-time speech analytics to stop the recording. And lastly, we have the IVR secure payment, which is where the agent will put the customer into an IVR, they do their thing, and at the end, they come back. Okay. So very important trend in the marketplace. Now, the fourth trend that I want to spend a couple minutes on is multi-channel. And organizations have been talking about multi-channel for over 17 years. They're now trying to call it omni-channel, and the way I view this is changing the name to protect the guilty, because most organizations are not doing a very good job at delivering multi-channel operating environments. Now, the concept here is really simple, and for that matter, I went to Gartner back in '97 to help organizations build multi-channel contact centers. But what happened is as the technologies came out, it could be, we had ACDs, automatic call distributors, right? And then we had email, and then we had chat, and then we had SMS, and now we have social media. Lots of different types, by the way, of course. But now we've got different silos and different groups handling each of these different transactions, and sometimes they share transactions. Unfortunately, we've got different CRM and servicing applications, and the name of the game behind the multi-channel contact center is that all these interactions will come into one universal queue. The appropriate rules will be applied to them, and then there can be standardized handling, and it doesn't mean same rules, but you're going to one place to set it up, so you're able to standardize the handling, and you'll have one view of the customer. And this is something whose time has really finally come, and it's critically important. It will dramatically improve the quality of your service at the same time as it significantly reduces your operating costs. So another great trend, and again, one we're talking about, but it's actually happening now. And so now, let's wrap up with the fifth trend that I want to talk about, and this is called adaptive and intelligent real-time routing. Now, we saw the multi-channel contact center. So here you see right on the left side, whether it's conveyor belts or a chainsaw, I'll leave it up to you, but I'll go with the conveyor belt. So we've got the conveyor belt bringing in all the different interactions, and we've got one place where we go to set up those routing rules. So they're totally different for different channels if that's what you want, but it goes beyond that because now due to the processing speed, right, and the level of integration with CRM applications, when an interaction comes in, we are now able to deliver personalized one-to-one service if that's what you want to do. Because what happens is as those interactions come in, the system looks into the CRM, the servicing application, the sales system. It could be the desktop analytics. It could be performance management, workforce management. And the system will then, in conjunction with the ACD and the information it gets from all the enterprise servicing applications, decide the right way to treat that caller. This is a wow, folks. If you decide you want to do bullseye reporting, which means to give the call back to the last person to handle it, you can do that. If you decide you want to do the opposite of bullseye recording, bullseye routing, then what you can do is make sure that the last person you give it back to was the last agent. And why would you do that? Because in the CRM notes, you'd see an indication that it was a really bad call. And you can do everything in between. So you may decide to route some calls to the self-service solution, some to the ideal agent, it may be that the caller is the senior executive in a Fortune 10, so you're going to want to get that to your CEO. The fact is, with this technology, which is a new form of routing, we're able to finally deliver on the promise of one-to-one. And all of this, as you'll see on the last slide here, is enabled by the very deep level of integration between the ACD and the CRM application. So we covered a lot of hot trends, but what's really significant is that companies, executives are really interested now in making the investments in order to improve the customer journey, in order to allow you to deliver a personalized and great service, because service really does matter. And with that, I'm going to thank you and pass the call over to Tom.
All right, good morning. And reflecting a lot of what Donna was talking about, simplicity of the cloud, scalability, cost efficiency, mobility, security, the flexibility of solutions, and quality assurance that all call centers are looking for. We'll cover all of those here. And we'll cover it with simplicity and scalability here. As Donna mentioned, being in the cloud actually simplifies your call center management, and the fact that especially if you're working with multiple call centers, it is a central management scenario, so it's much easier to manage. It's much easier for you to bring up additional agents because of the simplicity of a cloud or centralized system. You can also react very easily in your in the way you route or handle calls. Being in the cloud. You may have different regions, you want to do different things. Here again, someone that's kind of seeing the overall picture for your customers. Scalability, yes, being able to not have to add more equipment, more DSPs back in the day, more PRIs or additional channels back in the day. All of that stuff, the cloud eliminates all of that. You're able to leverage the cloud to keep adding agents and removing agents as you need. So your part of the cost efficiency of that is being able to expand and contract your call center as necessary. A lot of call centers are seasonal, especially here we're coming up on the holiday season. I imagine everyone's ramping up their call centers for call-in sales and support for retail and others. So that helps with the scalability going back and forth and goes directly to cost efficiency. Also with cost efficiency, we have zero upfront really capital investment that you need to do. No longer do you have to put in a large amount of servers, boards to handle all your calls, bring in all kinds of different channels, all the stuff that back-end investment that you used to have to do for telecom, let alone for your agents, whether that's desk sets or I'm not saying that people still don't use desk sets, but we have more options now. So you definitely have better cost efficiency. And leading a little add-on to lead on to cost efficiency too is the mobility. Yes, bringing on mobile brings on a whole new revelation of the type of agents out there. Anyone in your company could become essentially an agent. Anyone in your company could essentially be part of the call center. Bringing, you no longer have kind of like the financial restriction or the physical restriction of call centers. Here again with the, being able to do it on mobile tablets, having soft phones, or anything like that. Right now, even our product, you could just have a simple cell phone. The cell phone would have all your agent information, your agent status, and you could be actually taking calls or placing calls as a queue agent right on that cell phone. The mobility aspect of that is really expanded, I think, the marketplace and what people can do, or even the concept of what a call center agent really is. And Donna mentioned about the multi-channel, and a lot of people, I think in this day of multimedia, everyone kind of understood that, okay, phone, that makes sense, email, that makes sense, oh, we added instant messaging, that made sense, okay, now videos coming in, and that kind of makes sense. But what I think was missing for a lot of companies is that a lot of companies went out to social media as well. They're on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook. They actually have some SMS integration. And, that wasn't always tracked. That wasn't always caught. And so now having that actually be part of the call center, you're not missing that customer touch point. You're not missing someone saying something good or being reactive to someone who's not happy. And that's a very positive step, especially with social media being so in your face, everyone knows what most people are saying. So here again, it's the ability to manage your call center and customers much more flexibly. Security. Donna touched on security and the PCI compliance, and as Donna mentioned, there were a lot of different methods to becoming PCI compliant. I remember back in the day that what they called the clean call center, which you were pretty much stripped at a locker and set in front of a phone. That way they could, no one could write anything down. No one, of course, photographic memory becomes a problem, but not too many people have that. Those kind of things. Well, now there's multiple levels of making PCI compliance capable. In our solution, one of the things that we do is a combination of what Donna was talking about. Yes, we mask the DTMF tones. They're not recorded. The agent can't hear it, nor does the recording system capture it. Okay, but one of the things that we do is we integrate with an agent desktop that allows the customer to stay on the line with the agent, enter their information via DTMF. The agent, all they see is little asterisks. That way they can walk them through the process. If they don't understand what a CVV code is, you can prompt them, just turn your card over. It's that little number on the back, and it's a little ball on the left side or whatever, on the right side, depending on the card. So it actually helps the process along and processes it through much faster. We actually then actually have our product integrate with the clearinghouse as well. So that actually, the agent actually can see that the card went through. They don't see any information about the card, or if the card didn't go through, that maybe the person entered something invalid or something along the way. Also, along the security line is being, we happen to be JITC certified. We have our product running on military bases and in military hospitals, where that's another level of security that you need to get through, to quantify, so that your call center is very secure. And quality assurance. Donna mentioned call recording. Call recording has been given for many, many years, different ways of doing that. But there's also the element of speech analytics that falls into this. The product that NetFortris sells has speech analytics as well as an option that, you can do your keyword phrases and searches. If you have to be Dodd-Frank compliant because you're in the financial services space, that means you have to talk to the customer about risk. And you probably have a little spiel that you have to do depending on who you are. And this is definitely a way that you can see that you're meeting the requirements for that. Of course, and it also alerts for different keywords that may not be pleasant, or you may want to alert on, stuff like that. Very much a time saver for call center supervisors. Even our call center supervisor a year ago or so, before we had speech analytics, was having to do random sampling. How much time does that take? And it's not that effective. So really a labor saver as well. And then Q analytics, and we call it Q analytics. Everyone used to call it, call center reporting. Yes, it's all the fluffy graphs and reports of how the calls came in, how they were handled, what was going on with the calls. And of course, the product has the ability to be very customized. So you can actually create your own. We actually create a nice GUI interface for you to create your own reporting, or we have hundreds of canned reports based on what customers have requested in the past for call centers. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that overview. And thank you, Donna, for the great overview of the hottest topics. We have gotten a few questions from the audience, and so we would like to pose it to the folks, the experts here. The first one is actually for Mr. Swayze, and it's in regards to the mobility piece. So the question is, in regards to mobility, do you have a mobile app, or how do the agents and supervisors, how are they able to work in the mobile manner?
Right. And yes, we do. We do have a mobile app. Our mobile apps are available for mobile phones and tablets, as well as desktops, laptops. They are multi-OS capable, so it doesn't matter if you're Android or iOS. Yes, there is a soft phone available for tablets, okay, so that the tablets could actually be your entire agent interface as well. And of course, the agent actual module fits on all those as well. On the mobile interface, we don't really do the soft phone on the mobile interface because the mobile is already a phone. But what's nice is that we integrate directly with the phone. So our system will actually place calls on behalf of the call center and receive calls as an agent within the call center.
And for supervisors, is there?
Yes. There's some very slick apps that we have available for supervisors, especially on the tablet space. I remember back in the day, the old DSS boards, you had the tickers and all that kind of stuff going on. But no, now it's much more complete an experience on tablets. So a supervisor can be wandering the floor with a tablet or even a cell phone. Of course, the real estate on a cell phone is dependent on the cell phone itself. If you have a smaller cell phone, it's going to be a very slimmed down amount of information. If you have what do they call it now, a phablet, which is somewhere in between, it's a little bit more information. And if you have the full tablet interface, it's every bit as much as you would get on a desktop. It's a great experience.
Thank you, Tom. The next question is for Donna. Donna, you talked about adaptive real-time intelligent call distribution. Can you give me some examples of this?
Yeah, there's so many examples. I mean, what's significant about this real-time and adaptive is that it does allow organizations to do one-to-one. So we've been talking about one-to-one marketing forever, although if you go back in time, that was really one-to-many. This is truly one-to-one service because what's happening is, so we're taking the same concepts as CTI, right? So CTI allowed us to use information from the telephony side to then access the customer's information and do screen pop. And it's funny, I did one of the first CTIs in financial services, and when we first started to do it, we actually had to back away from saying, hello, Mr. Smith, because people got wigged out. But now they expect it, and what they want to have happen is customers really do want you to know who they are when they call, and that's what this adaptive real-time does. And not only does it allow, I'm going to give you a couple examples, not only does it allow you to know who they are, which is really great for the customer, it also allows the organization to know the value of that customer, so the organization can decide what way it wants to handle that customer, which is a little bit tricky because there are going to be some customers who, truthfully, you would really like for them to go to your closest competitors. So if, for example, no matter how they call in, you only give them a self-service, which is a use, and I don't necessarily recommend it, but it is an example of a use, you can absolutely do that. As I mentioned, there's a lot of situations where a caller just wants to get back to the person who they last spoke to. And so in that scenario, we call that bullseye routing. And in that scenario, what would happen is that the agent at the end of the prior call would actually have to do a wrap-up, and as part of the wrap-up, it would be a very good idea for them to identify whether it was a good call, which would be rated a 9 or 10 in that character, in that position, or if it was a really bad call, a 1 or 2. So then when the customer calls in again, the system can actually go look and see who last handled it and whether it was a good call. And if it was a good call, it will go back to Johnny if Johnny was the last one to handle it. And if it was a bad call, it wouldn't go to Johnny. I mean, I recently was calling a call center, and I was calling late, and I kept getting the same uneducated agent who didn't know anything. And so I called back once, I got them. I called back a second time, and I laughed and said, got you again. And the third time I said to the person, are you the only one there? And they said, yes. So I knew not to call back again. There's where, it actually wasn't bullseye reporting, but it functioned the same way. But as you can see, you got to be careful. You may decide that you want to route the call based on their value. You may decide that you want to route the call to the hottest salesperson at that point in time, which is going to change on an ongoing basis. So there are so many different ways that you can route the call. I mean, it's just an amazing capability. Back to you.
Thank you, Donna. And we had also a question in regards to moving the contact center to the cloud and whether it will save money.
Yes.
Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, it can. It goes back to what I was talking about. The contact center can be adaptive. You can have more agents when you need them, fewer when you don't. There is no upfront cost for hardware. You're not having to deal with your telecom back-end infrastructure for PRIs and whatnot. Yeah, it's definitely more cost-effective. And also, with mobility and some of the mobile stuff out there, soft phones reduce the cost of desk hardware. So you no longer necessarily have to have that hard set that you used to have. So, yeah, it can be very cost-effective.
Okay, great. Instead of reading your question, we thought perhaps you might just ask the question here to the experts.
For who, what I was saying in the question is that for who is not an expert, I have very little consent there. What is the level of entry to be smart enough with an intelligent consenter? On the other side, what will I find out there? My wife is in direct response. She knows every consenter in the freaking country. But I never went into it because I think it's too complicated. It disrupts, my attention to other telecommunication sites. But what I found out, what are out there are still a very old call center structure. I found already everybody went on the cloud, but they're not expert yet. How will I set an analysis if it's profitable for me to go into this market?
Tom, I'll start with this one, then I'll pass it over to you. The original value proposition of cloud-based contact center was that it would democratize the world of contact center and make this functionality available to companies of all sizes. Whether you are a mom or pop an aluminum siding company, whether you are selling pizzas out of your house, although that would be kind of interesting, whether you whether you are a doctor's office, a travel agency, and the list just goes on. The fact is that contact center technology has a lot of advantages. Now, what doesn't have an advantage is having to spend, $250,000, even just $100,000 or so on that infrastructure. And if you're a small company, and from what you're describing, it sounds like that's the case. I mean, we know that's not going to happen. But in the world of cloud, the name of the game is that you can buy it by the drink. And this is something that Tom was pointing out. He was talking to scalability. So if you happen to need 2 seats, you can get 2 seats. If you happen to need 200 seats, you can get 200 seats. And what's exciting is that you can go up and down, and depending on the vendor you work with, that you can change on a daily basis. Don't recommend it, but you actually could. But it's not just contact center. It's not just the routing and queuing, which is really all you need to be a contact center. You now can get the recording. You now can get the PCI-DSS compliance. You now can get quality assurance. You now can get workforce management. All of this stuff is now available in the cloud. And what you also should be looking for is a vendor who can help you. I was pointing out that about resources, and this is one of the really exciting things. Contact center is both an art and a science, right? It takes some technology, but there's truly an art behind it and best practice. And if you work with the right vendor, regardless of your size, they should be able to help you do it right. Tom?
Absolutely, yes. And we have many people here with call center experience running different types of call centers. And to Donna's point, the call centers that are deployed are very dependent on the type of business it is. Every business has a slightly different spin on how they want it. Even within the same verticals, some verticals tend to focus more on one element or another that they really want to provide to their customer. So yes, having that background information of what you really want your call center to do for you, and then having the expertise of leveraging someone like NetFortris to say, okay, here's how we can do this for you, and then using the metrics to see is this working as I expected, and if it's not, let's change it. Okay, that's the whole idea. This is very flexible, and you have people standing behind you, even if you're very small, that know stuff about call centers that can help you.
So thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you very much to Donna Fluss and Tom Swayze for this wonderful session, and all the participants and all the folks that were able to join and give us about an hour of your time today.